So I'm aware that the title is extra cheesy and catchy, but in the world of a lot of remote webinars and meetings, I'm trying to keep things interesting and exciting. So thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to hosting this session today. I'm going to start off with a few stats of what we're seeing in cybersecurity in Canada mostly. So 56% of IT leaders believe that employees have picked up some bad cybersecurity habits since working from home during the pandemic. And 44% of organizations that don't do any form of cybersecurity awareness training are not doing so because of insufficient IT human resources. And this stat is from our very recently released CIRA Cybersecurity Survey. A little bit about that is that we released at the beginning of Cybersecurity Awareness Month on October 4th. We run this survey every year at CIRA, and we're trying to track trends over time. So we ask a lot of the same questions every year. However, this year we added a few based on some changes we're seeing with a lot of remote working during the pandemic, as well as cybersecurity insurance, really hot topic. And the focus, of course, being CIRA, the Canadian .ca domain registry, is that this is Canadian data. So whether you're calling in from somewhere else in Canada today or from abroad, a lot of stats that we see in the cybersecurity industry are very American focused. Well, this report is unique because it is Canadian focused. And it's based on survey responses from over 500 IT managers across Canada. Some good news coming out of this survey this year was that 93% of organizations in Canada are doing some form of cybersecurity awareness training. 95% said that training was effective in reducing cyber incidents. A little training can, whether that's phishing simulations or courses, can go a long way. And I find this stat particularly interesting. The fastest growing method of training is phishing simulations. So that's sending kind of fake phishing test emails to your users and getting them to report and not click on the links or open the attachments in them. We're seeing about 2/5 of Canadian organizations are doing some form of phishing simulation training. A little bit about CIRA, if you're not too familiar with our organization, we're kind of known as different things to different people. So what we are primarily is the .ca domain registry. So a little bit about that is that domain names .com, .org, .ca is Canada's domain. They're all operated by a registry is what they're called. And we are actually a not-for-profit organization. We're based out of Ottawa here, so that's where I'm calling from today. We also, from the funds generated from domain sales, we have a community investment program. And one aspect of that is our grant system that we donate to universities and other charities and not-for-profits across Canada that are doing some work trying to make the internet better in Canada. We also offer a suite of cybersecurity services, which I'll be talking about one of those today. We have a training platform, and we are 100 employees based out of Ottawa. So a little bit about CIRA if you're not too familiar. Okay, so a little bit about our cybersecurity awareness training. We are helping Canadian workplaces reduce cyber risk with a suite of cybersecurity services. You might have heard of Canadian Shield before, and this is kind of like the household version of our DNS firewall offering. Our cybersecurity awareness training launched in 2019 before the pandemic. So we were seeing some demand for some sort of training platform before the pandemic and before work from home was really big in Canada. But of course, with the shift to remote work, this has definitely seen an increase. And we've partnered with Beauceron Security, which is a New Brunswick-based organization, to deliver this solution to Canadians. And we're currently at over 200 customers across Canada. Now, my role in marketing at CIRA, one of the first things I did was put together 5 steps to implement training guide. So while we have technical onboarding all set for our training platform, what we found was that our customers, when we were onboarding them, had some questions. They had some best practices that they shared back with us on how to launch some form of awareness training in their organization. And of course, that varies whether it's a big organization or a small company, what their priorities are for training. I'm going to be talking a lot about the tips from this 5 steps guide in the presentation today. And what I've done to kind of make things interesting, keep it keep it interesting is applied some self-help tips from these popular books. So maybe you've heard of a few or even read a couple of these before, and taking some just generic life advice, but applying it to a cybersecurity context. So without further ado, this is how I've applied it to cybersecurity, how to win friends and influence people, how to get your users motivated to complete a training program, the power of habit, getting in the habit of reporting cyber incidents to your IT team, practicing mindfulness while checking email, breaking bad password habits, and cleaning up your home network with the shift to work from home. So I'm going to be discussing each of these takeaways from the book. So how to win friends and influence people, classic, a self-help book. The main message behind this is to talk in terms of other people's interests and never ever criticize, condemn, or complain, and praise the slightest improvements. Use encouragement. This is something that's baked into our training platform. We're not trying to shame anyone or single users out for failing to report incidents or clicking on phishing emails. It's all based on the fact that everyone has something to learn, and you know, using that encouragement to help build good, positive behaviors. So just a brief background on what you get with the training, and this can all be customized if you want, but generally this is what happens. You get a survey as a user, you take 4 courses so that everyone has the same basic knowledge on various cybersecurity topics, instructions on how to report phishing simulations, and then a series of automated phishing simulations that are sent to every user with the goal of getting people to report them. So a challenge that we heard from some of our customers, you know, yay, I'm so excited to do this mandatory training for work, said no one ever. But of course, the bulk of people do understand their role in protecting their own organizations and their own workplaces and the data that they have access to. There's always, however, some users that might need a little push and motivation to complete training. So in the chat or in the Q&A, if you want to, this is some engagement for you guys, some participation encouraging. So what tips would you have for getting employees to complete just any kind of training that they have to do for work? Doesn't have to be cybersecurity awareness training specifically, but if they have, you know, like in Canada, we have workplace safety training that they have to complete when you're new to a company, and cybersecurity awareness training, of course. But if you have any tips, throw them in the chat. While you think about that, I'm going to share one that we have in our guide that we think works very effectively. So when training is assigned to a whole company, what our IT team did was gave an update on a status report on which departments are completing training first. And this kind of incites a friendly competition between departments. It doesn't single out any users, going back to the advice from the book, but just a fun little update to get your department up to 100%. Yeah, I'm seeing interactive training. This is critical, absolutely. No one wants to really listen to a boring, dry PowerPoint lecture. Making sure you can interact with training, maybe some quizzes can help. And yeah, if you have any other thoughts, let me know. I'm going to move on to the next slide, which shows some of the answers that we have in our guide. So sharing progress, I mentioned, make training fun and interactive. A lot of training platforms make a gamified solution. So that means, you're getting badges or certificates for completing training, as well as points if you complete certain courses. Offer incentives. So that's kind of like the opposite of singling out or punishing teams that don't complete training. It's actually providing incentives for the first teams to complete training, reminding them of the why. I think this is absolutely critical, going back to the lessons of the book. Putting yourself in a user's shoes, some people might not understand why they need to take training. So you have to really drive that home, that everyone plays a role in protecting their organization. Okay, thanks, Luella. The chocolate is, of course, always a good motivator. And if I had if we were meeting in person, I would be throwing chocolate bars at people that participated. So virtual chocolate bar for you. Getting people to share something that they've learned is really effective. And I like to say there's something that anyone can learn, no matter how kind of technical they are during training. And getting support from upper management, this is absolutely critical. It's usually IT departments that are implementing a training program, but getting support and sponsorship from someone in upper management is definitely, it goes a long way in launching a program. Avoid spearphishing backfire. So spearphishing would be a customized targeted email. So instead of our platform is full of phishing templates that are automatically sent, but administrators are able to customize, maybe put in personalization. So it says, "Dear Erin" in the email, and it might use some company process or information that real cyber criminals would use and exploit during a spearphishing campaign. Now, you might have heard some news articles about where this backfired. So it's usually in regards to sensitive topics in the phishing email. So another question for you that you can put in the chat would be, what are some topics that you might want to tread lightly on for sending customized spear phishing campaigns if you were to be doing a training program at your organization? I'll give it a second. All right, I will give you a hint. The reality is 14% of Canadians reported at least one real phishing attack related to COVID-19 tests, a potential cure for the virus, or the benefit that you got if you were out of work as a result to the virus. Okay, I'm seeing an answer. Offer money. Yes. Get, I don't even know how to say that big number, but yes, usually regards to employee bonuses. Another one, as I have up here on the screen, is related to health and the uncertainty around the pandemic. Tax is another good one. Yep. Thank you. And my advice here is how to win friends, how to keep employees or users on your side, is that there are alternative ways to educate employees on these sensitive topics. One simple solution is to show an example of a real phishing email that is about this topic instead of using it as a test content for your users. Another one is just sharing articles showing, or stats on how these are real threats and you should be vigilant and being looking out for these. But I think it's when you translate these sensitive topics to a test that sometimes people get, they might not react quite positively to it, and it might be shut off of training. So that's not what you want. Another tip I have is to think about a communications plan for training. So in our guide that I mentioned at the beginning, we have a communications plan, a timeline for launching training. It covers all these key messages. In the shoes of the user, what important information do you need to know in order to keep your organization secure? So another question for the group here is, it's, as I mentioned, frequently IT teams that are delivering these training programs. But thinking about a small organization, what other job functions or roles should be consulted when putting together a launch of a training program? Any ideas there? So IT given, yes. HR, absolutely. HR again, yeah. I mentioned senior management. Getting a sponsor is really helpful. And in this comms plan that we have, we actually suggest getting a senior member of your team to send out the announcement of training that it's coming. Yeah, so HR I think is another critical one because it's training of your employees. Project manager, that's a really good one. Yes, that can definitely help keep things on track. All right, moving on to book number 2. So the power of habit. The key lessons from this book are that habits work in 3-step loops, and I'll explain how that works in just a second. And you can change your habits by changing your routine. So these are the 3 steps of the habit. What would this look like in kind of just every day? The cue would be to put on your shoes. The routine would be go for a run, and the reward is the endorphin. So this book is all about, building healthy habits, like going for runs more often. So the suggestion they have, if you're you're having trouble building this habit, maybe put your shoes out right at your front door and all your running clothes, and then you're more likely to see that cue and actually follow through on building the habit. Now, applying this to a cybersecurity context, what would that look like? Let's think about checking your email. So get started thinking when you're logging into work for the morning and you're checking all your emails, what would be the routine and the reward? Well, here is what a cyber criminal might hope for, is that you're looking at your email and you're reacting to an urgent request with the hope that you're accomplishing a task. So they're exploiting that urgency and the need to get something done or to click on a link and fill something out. Now, with regular phishing training, what can happen is that a user will look at their email, notice some fishy cues in the email, and then report it to IT just to be safe. Now, we know that cyber criminals use a variety of tactics when phishing, and here's an example of kind of a different take on phishing emails. So they might spoof an email to look like it's coming from a trusted person, like a CEO, and there you have the user thinking, hey, I trust this person, or there's going to be consequences if I don't get this task done, and I need to respond right away. Another one would be things that are too good to be true. So it's not always about fear and urgency. It is about, creating some excitement. You're getting an email about a free Amazon gift card, even though maybe you didn't even sign up for this contest, or it's just coming out of nowhere, and you want to click on it to claim an exciting prize, and then you get free stuff. Something kind of unique about our platform is that each phishing simulation is ranked on a scale of emotions, and we actually have some reporting. Once phishing simulations are running for a while, you can get some reports based on what are the least clicked and most clicked emotions. So I find this kind of interesting. And some practical tips that we have for getting users to report phishing and build this habit. Make it easy to report phishing. Use a button. So this is similar to putting those running shoes right at your front door and with the hope of going for a run. Close the feedback loop with users. So having the user understand that what they're doing is effective in protecting their organization. So if I report an email, I know that someone's going to get back to me saying, hey, Erin, it's legitimate. Thanks for reporting. Position training with empowerment, not shame. That goes with the lessons of the first book as well. And I have this flowchart here. I'm not going to go over every scenario, but I do think it's kind of handy in mapping out what could happen if a user receives a suspicious email. So it's not necessarily a phish, an actual phishing campaign, but it could be a simulation. In the event that they are clicking on a link or opening an attachment, worst case scenario, here's kind of all the outcomes that could happen. If they ignore or delete the email, not the best thing, because if it is a real phish, then the IT team isn't aware about it and can't act accordingly. And how they're reporting their email to IT using that button or a forwarding address. This is of course, the desired outcome. And with training, people would be following this flow of things. Number 3, so practice mindfulness while checking email. Key lessons are that mindfulness isn't about relaxation. So I don't know how much you know about mindfulness, but it's more about being there in the moment. And there's a difference between doing mode and being mode. So I think the example they use in this book is that, climbing the stairs, that you're kind of doing this on autopilot. You're not actually thinking about every step that you take, but mindfulness would be about really being there and present. And yeah, so focus during automatic behaviors. Now, how would this apply to cybersecurity context? Be aware of the clicking hour. So the right phish at the right time can get anyone if they're not being mindful, especially before coffee. So our partners, both Surround Security, ran an analysis of phishing simulation data, and they found that 8 a.m. to 9 a.m., even though that accounts for 1 hour of the day, that's when 15% of the clicks on the links in phishing emails occur. So there might be something there about checking your email before coffee. And these are things to be mindful of, and things that over time, when you build those habits, things to look out for. The NIST framework uses a phish scale of difficulty. So the more cues or red flags, and there's a lot of examples up here in the different categories, the more cues there are, the easier it is to spot the email because it looks like a phish. And with time, like we recommend starting off sending simulations and easing users into the process. So starting off with easy phishes, progressing into more difficult phishes with less cues. And there's actually an entire course dedicated to this in the platform. So a mindful approach to phishing. Just really briefly, it goes over 4 key questions that users should ask while they're checking their email. Now I'm putting up this question. You don't have to answer it in the chat, but I just want you to think about if you do work at a place that does run phishing simulations, if you have ever fallen for one, and what was it about that particular email, and how did you feel after you clicked on it? So I must say, after a few years of having this kind of training at CIRA, I have clicked on one phishing simulation. That's it. Seeing a yes. So yeah, just think back to the time, what was it about that particular email? And this is proof that I'm sure a lot of you on the call are very technical, but there's proof that there's something for everyone to learn. And it could be about timing of the email, as I mentioned, before coffee. Context, so whether you're traveling, maybe a little bit distracted, or you're checking your email on a mobile device, the different tactics being used, and who the email appears to be coming from can be a factor. All right, breezing on through, checking the time, 12:25. I'm sure we'll have plenty of time for questions if you have any at the end. Book number 4, Breaking Bad Password Habits. So yes, another book all about habits, but I think it's pretty applicable to training. The key lessons from this book are small, incremental, everyday routines compound into massive change over time. With training, maybe you're not trying to change people's behaviors too much too soon. That could really turn people off of training, but you want to introduce things slowly. And if we want to form new habits, make them obvious, attractive, and easy. And I'm just seeing note in the chat here, fell for a phishing email because it was coming from someone inside the organization, or it appeared to be coming from someone inside the organization. That was the same case with me. So it looked like it was coming from someone who also just happens to have a habit of sending random emails without a lot of context. So that was it for me. That's why it worked on myself. So some bad habits, I mentioned people picking up bad habits while working from home. Maybe some of these habits are related to sharing passwords with their colleagues remotely. As I mentioned, you want to ease users into new policies, procedures, and tools like multi-factor authentication. It can take time and you might experience some resistance to this. You really need to do a good job of explaining why it's important and making things easy to use. And of course, give people the tools that they need, like password managers, enable single sign-on. Don't expect a user who isn't so technically competent to seek out a password manager on their own. This is something that they have to learn and something that maybe you want to teach them. And we have a tool in the platform called the Risk Advisor, and it can help identify the top priority risks based on the data we're seeing with training. So users will fill out a survey. One of the questions is, like, do you think you play a role in protecting your company? And of course, if people are answering no, that would flag that risk to the top. And a lot of them are password related as well. So I think I have a screenshot here, and it divides the risks into different categories like people, technology, and processes. So here's a screen grab of just some fake data in the platform of the people risks in an organization. And you can see it's ranking them from top priority to low priority. This is what you could use this data to actually take some action. So you can identify some next steps, such as introducing a password manager if you don't have one at your organization. And number 5, clean up your home network. The lessons of this book, The Life-Changing Magic of Tidying Up, are a dramatic reorganization of the home, causes dramatic changes in lifestyle and perspective, and keep things that spark joy. So I was just trying to tie this to working from home and being on your home network. So that same survey I mentioned about employees picking up bad behaviors while working from home also stated that over a quarter of employees admit to making mistakes that compromise company security while working from home. And they're not telling anyone about that. And they think they can get away with it because they're not in the office and no one else can see. So some tips that we have are to get rid of old and unsupportive devices, and update the ones that you do keep. Practice a clean desk policy, even though you're not in the office, it's still important to build that habit. And password protected Wi-Fi networks spark joy. So some relevant courses related to remote working and work from home that we have in the platform, and a lot of those tips I just shared are included in these courses. Cybersecurity practices for remote workers. I think this was the most popularly assigned course in the last year. How to declutter your digital life. I'm going to show a few more here. Now those last two, online shopping safety tips and social media scams you should know. You might be thinking that's not entirely applicable to teaching employees how to be safe in the workplace. But I think there's two good reasons to have courses like this in training. One would be it keeps training applicable and interesting to users. And two is that cybersecurity good behaviors are going to happen at any point in your day. So it's not just you're going to be practicing cybersecurity best practices at work, and then you're going to go home and not keep any of your personal data secure. If you're learning these best practices, it's applicable no matter the context. Okay, so I think we have some time to ask this question. Now, something that we say is that which you can measure, you can manage. So if you were in the role of a manager of a training program at a workplace, how would you define success of a training program? These are the 3 tips that we have included in our guide. So could you reduce the time that IT is taking to deal with cyber incidents? So the number of incidents, but also the time impact that it has. Number 2, phishing metrics. Lots to take a look at there. Click rates, report rates, and how that could be maybe divided by department. So are there more high-risk departments in your organization? Maybe ones that have more access to sensitive data or different platforms. Estimate the employee's current level of knowledge. So maybe you're quizzing employees at the beginning of training and then quizzing them again after training and seeing if their knowledge increases of certain cybersecurity best practices, or even if it's if your goal is, do we have a password policy and do employees know where it is? And you can measure success that way. If you have any other ideas for how you would measure success, so it's phishing simulations, courses, throw those in the chat because I'm interested to see. But I think that those 3 cover quite a bit of the commonly used ones for training. We do have a 10-minute on-demand demo of the platform if you're interested in seeing what it's all about. The middle image there is showing our course and phishing simulation document. So something I recently put together, it covers kind of the philosophy of the different types of courses that we offer through the platform and why. One big thing that I like to talk about is the Canadianness of the content. So while cybersecurity is, of course, a global issue, and if you're experiencing a phishing attack, it could be originating from anywhere in the world. However, there is some local context to cybersecurity training that I believe is important to share. So if you're a victim of fraud, how to report it to the Canadian Anti-Fraud Centre, as well as using Canadian examples, maybe some news articles where applicable. So yeah, while cybersecurity is a global issue, some local context I think is important. And it covers also a few of the phishing examples and the different tactics that are used in the platform. And as I mentioned before, we have a full guide. It's not specific to CIRA's platform. It could apply to whether you're conducting training in-house or using a third-party platform, and whether you're doing a mix of phishing simulations or courses. It really guides you through launching the training program all the way through to after you've launched, how do you measure success? over time, and how can you keep users engaged? Because cybersecurity training isn't usually just like a one-time thing. It could be ongoing.